sensory tracts. Ascending tract, we are going to see the ascending tracts. We have seen the neurons which is responsible for the spinal cord tracts. We have seen the localization where the spinal cord tracts is present in the spinal cord. Now we will see the pathway. The first one in the sensory tracts, that is ascending tract, we are going to see is the very important one, dorsal column pathway. It is also called as tract of Gall and Burdak. They are the person who experimented and found this pathway. So you also call it as tract of Gall and Burdak. Okay, so first this is ascending pathway. So we have to move from the base to the top. That is how the pathway is going to travel. Just remember, no need to remember all the course of the pathway. Okay, you should know from where it is originating and what are all the sensations it is carrying and to which part of the brain it is giving the sensation. Okay, at least those things you should remember. If you are remembering the entire course of the pathway, well and good. But if you don't know from where it is originating, where it is terminating, that is a big mistake. Okay, clear? So this is dorsal column pathway, and this is mainly responsible for carrying the sensation of touch and proprioception. Okay, so this is a sensory pathway. So it is going to carry the sensation. Which sensation? Touch and proprioception. Okay, so those, what are the receptors for touch? We have seen just now mucinous corpuscles and Merkel's disc. That is the two receptors for touch sensation. Okay, so those two receptors now going to receive the sensation and it is going to give it to the spinal cord through the first order neuron. From the receptor, whatever nerve fiber is coming, that you call as first order neuron. Until that nerve fiber go and synapse in another point, you call it as a first order neuron. Okay, so this first order neuron, it forms the dorsal root ganglion. That is the ganglion which is present outside the spinal cord, dorsal root ganglion. And from the dorsal root ganglion, this is the point where we have seen the fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus. Yes or no? It will enter the dorsal root. First enters the white column, then enters the gray column, and again move up to the dorsal column, specifically in the fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus. And those which are fasciculus gracilis, in the medial part, it carries the touch and proprioception in the lower half of the body. From the upper part of the body, the lateral part, fasciculus cuneatus, it will carry the sensation. That is why you are having two regions. Cuneatus medially carry the sensation from lower parts of the body, and gracilis carries the lower parts of the body, and cuneatus carries the upper parts of the body. Okay, and now it is ascending up. It is ascending upwards. See over here, it is ascending upwards, and then it is now going up from the spinal cord to the medulla. In the medulla, you have the nucleus called as nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus. So fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus are the nerve fibers. Okay, then from the dorsal root ganglion, in the sense it is forming a synapse over here. It gives the nerve fibers, you call it as second order neuron. Here the representation is given for cuneatus in one picture and gracilis in one picture. Okay, the red and blue, it is for cuneatus and gracilis correspondingly. Okay, and then crossing the medulla and terminating in the nucleus. In the sense the second order neuron is ending over here. And from the nucleus gracilis nucleus cuneatus, the third order neuron emerges crossing the midline. It means that, for example, if the sensation is carried from the right side of my body, once when it reaches to the level of the nucleus gracilis nucleus cuneatus, it is going to the left side. The pathway is going to the left side. Okay, and then it enters into the midbrain at the point called as internal arcuate fibers. Then it is going along with the medial lemniscus, and then it is terminating in the thalamus. See, from the nucleus gracilis nucleus cuneatus, third nerve order neurons is emerging, third order neurons crossing the midline. Again, it is forming the synapse here. The third order neuron is ending in the thalamus. From the thalamus, it is going and reaching the sensory cortex, specifically somatosensory cortex 1, Brodmann area 3, 1, 2. You have to represent in this way, not like 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3. Okay, clear? So this is the pathway of dorsal column tract. So finally, on the output, sensation from one side of the body, how it is going to the other side, you understood. Because of the crossing of fibers in the level of pons and medulla. Okay, and the sensations it is carried, mainly conscious proprioception, the joint position, unconscious exteroception, and vibratory sensations. If you are keeping mobile in your pocket in vibratory mode and you are able to sense the mobile is vibrating, how? Because of these dorsal column pathway, you are able to identify the vibratory sensation. And light touch, tactile sensation, 2-point discrimination, localization, everything. And stereognosis, and also pressure with fine discrimination. What is meant by stereognosis? Identifying the object without seeing, just by touching the texture of the object. This will be coming only with those known objects. For example, I am closing your eyes and giving you a chalk piece. You will just feel the texture of the chalk piece and identifying, telling me this is a chalk piece. I am giving you a pen, or I am giving you a pencil. I am giving you a chocolate. You are able to identify without seeing, just by feeling the texture. That mechanism is called as stereognosis. And whatever sensations carried in this dorsal column pathway, if there is any lesion, these functions cannot be sensed by us. Okay. And in those cases, you will get a condition that you call as astereognosis. Okay, clear? So this is what is up to the dorsal column pathway. And now we will move on to the spinothalamic tract, the second sensory tract. Spinothalamic tract, this is mainly for pain, temperature, sensations. Okay, so this also an ascending tract. So it starts from the bottom part, and the first order neuron is emerging over here, which is concerning with the pain and the temperature sensation. Remember the name of the pathway, the sensation it is carrying, and the nerve fiber. In dorsal column pathway, you have to remember nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus. That is the nucleus. The fasciculus gracilis cuneatus is the nerve fiber. Only that is the difference. And it is terminating in the somatosensory cortex area 3, 1, 2. That is somatosensory area 1. Remember that alone. And in this case, spinothalamic tract, you have two different types of tracts based upon the location, anterior and lateral spinothalamic tract. Okay. So this anterior and lateral spinothalamic tract, it is going to carry the sensation, pain and temperature sensation, This is with respect to the lateral spinothalamic tract. Remember that pain and temperature. And what is this anterior spinothalamic tract? It is carrying the sensation from the Pacinian corpuscle. What is the Pacinian corpuscle specifically for? Pressure. Remember this. Okay. And it is terminating also in the somatosensory cortex 1, area 312. Okay. At least this you should remember. The rest course of the pathway, if you don't remember, it's fine. But here also the crossing of fibers takes place, but it is at the level of spinal cord itself. Remember, see here, the crossing of fibers from one side to the other side is happening. So it means that both pain, temperature, pressure also from one side of the body, finally it is reaching the higher center in the opposite side. Okay, if you are not able to feel the pain and temperature on your right side, where is the defect in your brain? If the left side of the brain is affected. Okay, clear? Then we will move on to the termination specifically in the somatosensory area 312. And now, what is homunculus? The arrangement of body positions with respect to the cerebral cortex, you call it as homunculus. If there is a stroke in your brain, if any part of the brain cortical centers is getting defected, stroke in the sense loss of blood supply, infarction or ischemia in that specific part of the brain, why it is causing the defect or paralysis in your limbs? Because of this homunculus organization. See, this is your cortex, and the biggest part is being occupied by your upper limbs and the lower limbs, and the face is having the smallest region when compared to the upper limbs and the lower limbs, then the tongue and the swallowing centers, all those things. So the big region of the cortical sensation, sensory homunculus, is accompanied by the upper limbs and the lower limbs. That is why when a person is getting stroke, cerebrovascular accident, immediately there is paralysis in your limbs with respect to the side. Okay, so that is because of this sensory homunculus arrangement. And then gate control mechanism, this is not needed for you people. And coming to the trigeminal pathway, we have seen the pain, temperature, sensation, that is from the body parts. Specifically the pain sensation in the face, it is carried by the trigeminal pathway. How many divisions of trigeminal now we have? 3. What are they? Ophthalmic, maxillary, mandibular. V1, V2, V3. We will tell it in short way. Okay. So this trigeminal nerve is responsible for carrying the touch, pain and temperature sensation from the face. If there is swelling in the trigeminal ganglion, okay, so this will result in a condition you call it as trigeminal neuralgia, and the cause of this is idiopathic, and it is most common in elders, and the treatment most commonly given is alcohol injection to relieve the inflammation of the trigeminal nerve in order to relieve the symptoms. Okay, so that you remember. And now moving on to the descending tract. In the descending tract, the most important one we are going to see is only the pyramidal tracts. Okay, that is the motor tract. So this pyramidal tract, what are all the sensations it is going to see? Okay, remember the sensations in dorsal column pathway, spinothalamic tract. And then in the motor tract, the pyramidal tract, what are all the sensations? Because if you have any defect In not identifying these symptoms, your mind should always think of the specific pathway responsible for carrying the sensation. Okay, clear? So this is carrying fine and skilled movements. We are seeing motor tracts. So it is related with the movements. Okay, so fine and skilled movements. Imbalance in the posture and the balance. And control of head and eye movements. Muscle tone. Okay, and then unconsciously associated movements. Movements happening without any conscious involvement. So this is the pyramidal tract. It is the tract which is traveling from higher center to the spinal cord. Okay, and just know the name why it is called as pyramidal tract is because so this is carrying the sensation, the motor response. Okay, sensory tracts will carry the sensation from the periphery to the higher center. This descending tract, it is now going to give the response, the motor response, which is analyzed by the higher center to the periphery. Okay, so the regions where it is carrying the sensation, bringing the sensation is from the motor cortex. Area 4 is specifically for primary motor cortex and associated cortex area 6, and also from 312. What is 312 specifically? We saw somatosensory cortex 1 and 2. Okay, whatever sensations given to you, for example, I am pricking your finger, that is carried by pain receptors, spinothalamic tract, giving the sensation to your higher center. I am pricking your finger with a needle. Will you keep on showing your finger, prick, prick, prick? Immediately what you will do because of the pain, withdrawing your finger. For withdrawal, the muscles, skeletal muscles should contract to make your arm flexed. How it is doing? Because of this pyramidal tract which is giving the response obtained from this sensory cortex. Okay, clear? So the receptor from the motor cortex, the cortical fibers is coming out like a fanning position. You call them as corona radiata because it is bringing the sensations from all these parts of the cortex. And then it is entering into the internal capsule. So this is the part where you have the thalamus, all those things, and the space in between you have the internal capsule. The fibers is traveling through this internal capsule, now entering into the brain stem, and at the location of medulla, here there is crossing of fibers. In the medulla you have medial lateral region. The medial part you call it as pyramid and olive. Okay, the crossing of fibers in the descending tract is taking place at the level of pyramid. So you call it as a pyramidal tract. Okay, clear? So it means that the descending tract also crossing the midline. If you are not able to move your left arm, then it means that there is a defect in the right side of your brain. Because before the level of spinal cord, at the level of medulla itself, there is crossing of fibers. Okay, clear? So this is what you have to remember. And also see over here, some fibers are in the same side and some fibers are crossing. That is 90% of the fibers will cross, only 10% do not cross. Okay, so that concept you remember. And then after that, it is coming to the spinal cord where anterior portion of the spinal cord, then the anterior horn fibers coming and giving the signal to the skeletal muscles that someone is pricking your finger, withdraw your arm, making the muscles of the upper limb to contract, resulting in the flexion. This is how the pyramidal tract is happening, working. Hemiplegia because of lesion in the pyramidal tract. Okay, paralysis in one side of the body. Contralateral hemiplegia on the opposite side. The most common location where you will get lesion in the pyramidal tract is internal capsule. Remember that always. Okay, clear? And the other things, quadriplegia, paraplegia, monoplegia, it depends upon the number of limbs which is having its loss of function. This one done. So up to this, the sensory and the motor tracts is completed.